Good morning, everybody. Hope that you have managed to join us all okay. I think I've admitted everybody in. So before I hand you over to the rest of the team who's going to walk you through sort of the AWS Datashield session, I'm just going to run through some very quick housekeeping with you all. Just to let you know, you'll be muted, but if you do have any questions, please just pop them in the chat box on the side of your screen, and then what we'll do is we'll read them out at the end as probably the best way forward when we have the Q&A. If you have any issues with visuals or audio or anything like that, please do communicate with us in the chat box so that we can try and resolve that for you. And just to let you know that the session will be recorded and we will share that out with you along with a copy of the slides so that you can play that back and share it with your colleagues. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Adam Thornton from Bytes, who's going to kick off the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Cassie. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Adam Thornton. I'm the Alliances Director at Bytes. So I have overall responsibility for a number of our technology propositions, but by far the biggest of which and the fastest growing is our partnership with Amazon. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And specifically, one of the new services that we brought to market, DataShield, which really is focusing all around how we help customers move back up into the cloud, and specifically AWS. But before we go into that and go into the detail, I'll just run through the agenda. So we've got some great speakers today from Amazon and from Veeam, as well as my colleague and our Cloud Services Director, Simon Walker. But we're going to kind of get a vision of what is Amazon seeing in the cloud, what use cases are they seeing, how is that being driven, how are they engaging with customers, where are they taking their services, a little bit about how we approach the market specifically, kind of what outcomes can we help you deliver, how can we help you get started, what are the plethora of services that we've got available. Simon will be running through that. And then Katia from Veeam will be talking about Veeam's approach to backup and data management as a whole, and some of the other services that they're taking to market in the cloud, and more of a rounded version of what they can do for you as a customer. And then at the very end, we'll have a Q&A, and I would encourage you all to ask as many questions as possible, really get the most out of this session. We've got a fairly small group this morning, so hopefully everyone's positive and upbeat and ready to keep us on our toes with some good questions. So before I hand over to Wayne and Tom from Amazon, what I thought I'd do is just give you a bit of background as to when we were setting up our AWS business unit, what were kind of some of the goals that we were looking to achieve, and what we were trying to do for our customers. And so to take it back to the beginning, one of the initial goals for us as an organization was to take away a lot of the operational unknowns from our customers, give them visibility, and ultimately give them direction as to how to solve some of those initial challenges that they might have faced in cloud. Whether that was, how do we get there? Or, now we're here, what do we do? We have got a range of services that we built out to give that visibility, give that confidence that you can take back control and really ensure that you're doing things in the right way when you move to cloud, and not just doing them the right way once, but continually optimizing and improving the way that you're working with Amazon. And as we've evolved, clearly we've built out more capability within our team, and Simon will go through some of those solutions and services that we've got later on, as I said. But we're not just about giving you a vision, it's about helping you to execute. And as I said before, taking away some of those operational unknowns, data points, how do we justify to the business that going down this route is the right way to do that? And so as we've evolved the business, we've very much tried to see how we can almost productize some of our solutions and services to make it even more accessible for you as customers to adopt. And again, to take away a lot of the pain and the heavy lifting from you and your teams, and to make it as smooth a process as possible. And really, DataShield does exactly that. What it gives us and what it gives our customers is another kind of landing point into cloud. If you're already in cloud and you've got some basic services, it's a great way to get a large proportion of your data up into cloud, closer to those workloads, so that you can adapt and be more agile and develop out more services and be a lot quicker to kind of the end game with those services. So DataShield as a proposition, we see it as just one of the many steps and one of the many things that you can do into cloud. But I think the way that we've automated and built out this process, it really does make it nice and easy for you to adopt. And then with our unique experience and knowledge around some of the Amazon funding programs and initiatives that are in place to support removing some of the commercial barriers and challenges to customers, we're uniquely placed to understand how we can get access to that funding, and more importantly, apply that to your specific requirement, so that we can remove as much, or in some cases all of that commercial cost for actually getting into the cloud, so that you're just looking at facing consumption bills and ongoing management charges, which again we can help with. But as I say, we're really trying to ensure that we are your go-to kind of confidence, a safe pair of hands in the AWS world. And so whatever it is you're looking to achieve, post this conversation, get in touch, because we've got a real range of services that you can adopt, and they tick kind of most of the areas that you're probably looking at cloud for. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Wayne and Tom, and I'll be back on for Q&A later. So thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoy.
That's most kind. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to everybody for attending today and making this a priority for your morning. We very much appreciate that. So as you can see, my name is Wayne Phillips. I am part of the EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa leadership team for public sector at AWS. And it's a great pleasure to be invited to kick off this session today and to add a little bit of AWS context around what's going to be coming next. You're going to hear from Tom and from our great partners and colleagues at Bytes and Veeam. I just want to start off by just talking a little bit about positioning the role of cloud in UK public sector today. Today in health, education, transport, tax, welfare, police, defence, cloud is very much part of the infrastructure, and it's very much part of the way in which services, citizen-facing services and internal-facing services are delivered. I've been here since the beginning of AWS public sector, which isn't that long ago. It's only 7 years ago. But I can tell you the huge change that's come about within public sector, and I probably don't need to preach that to you as practitioners from within the public sector organizations. I'm sure you've observed it as well. But if you compare where we were 7 years ago, and let me come back to that in a second, versus where we are today, and just sort of one benchmark of where we are today, as well as all those departments and organizations that I mentioned earlier on who are significant users of cloud and AWS in particular. Just look at one of the procurement frameworks. Look at G-Cloud in its 12th iteration today, 38,000 services available on G-Cloud today, 5,200 suppliers. In 2020, over 1.5 billion pounds spent, close to 10 billion pounds during the lifetime of the G-Cloud procurement framework since its inception. And that's just one of numerous ones, and I'm sure you've all got your own favorites and ones that you utilize as well. But I just wanted to sort of highlight that, because I think 7 years ago when I came to AWS, this would have been kind of a little bit of a dream, almost a little bit inconceivable, that cloud would have become such the normal, not the new normal, just the normal way of delivering solutions within the public sector. I won't go on and talk about all the policy changes and all of the stuff that I'm sure you're overly familiar with, but clearly the landscape around policy and around procurement and around what cloud is and how cloud can be used within public sector, the use cases, that's all changed dramatically. So, however, 7 years ago, where did we start? Well, we actually started with storage. AWS started with storage, and it's still a huge fundamental part of what we have to offer. And today we're going to hear how storage and how backup is more cost effective, secure, robust, fast, of course, all those things that you would imagine that we would want to talk about. But it's all part of an evolution, because what we've tended to find is that customers who start in this world, start in the area of storage and backup, soon move into disaster recovery, soon move into long-term digital preservation. And within public sector, of course, that's hugely important, because you've got very onerous targets associated with digital preservation and making sure that data citizen data, personally identifiable data is held safely and securely, but also held for a really, really long time. So, storage is an incredible part of what we have to offer at AWS, and Tom's going to talk about that next. But I just want to finish off by saying that very few customers of ours just come to AWS to buy a bit of our cloud. What they come to AWS for is infrastructure that becomes part of an outcome, a bit of a hackneyed phrase, a solution, but it's an outcome that is responding to a business need or a business challenge. And that's really where our partners come in. You'd expect me to say that because I'm the partner guy, but thanks so much to our colleagues at Bytes and at Veeam for the magic that they weave on top of the infrastructure that we provide. We would be nothing really without the capabilities that our partners provide on top of our services, our core fundamental services. So thanks very much indeed for inviting me today. I'll stick around for the Q&A if anybody's got any questions. But without any further ado, I'll hand it over to my colleague Tom, who's going to take us through the next piece of the AWS story. Thanks very much.
Tom, you're on mute.
I think that's the phrase of 2020, isn't it? Before you tell me you're on mute. So good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Sargent, and I've successfully unmuted myself. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why AWS for backup. So building on some of the themes that Wayne just explored, I'm going to go into a little bit of the business and technical background for why you should consider AWS for backups. So thinking about how we position ourselves, kind of a big deal across the storage world at the moment. And often we try and be quite humble about this, but we can't ignore the statistics. So we're #1 in file, object, and block, and we have the most complete cloud storage portfolio. And that's important to understand as we build on this base of storage and help partners build innovative services that can really accelerate your time to cloud migration. Now, we've got a pretty big global presence. As Wayne discussed, we've been in storage for quite a while. In fact, S3, the storage that I'm going to talk about, the service I'm going to talk about a little bit, was one of our first services delivered. And we've got a huge presence globally. Now, because we're a public sector audience, clearly you really just care about the London region to make sure that data doesn't leak anywhere else. Now, thinking about how we're going to be building services on top of our offerings, customers are building things like backup and restore, archive and compliance, home directories, data lakes, and business critical applications as well. And today we're going to focus a little bit on backup and restore and why that's so important and why we believe that AWS is the best target for you leveraging partner solutions. So traditionally, backup and archive has been quite challenging to actually deliver on premises with all of the different applications that may be involved. What we do is we leverage S3 and we help you choose the best class of storage to really derive the best cost over time. Now, since S3 was released back in 2006, we've actually reduced the effective price by about 80% per gigabyte between then and now in 2021. And we do that by offering different classes of storage, which really equate to different mechanisms of storing for data for the long term. So let me talk a little bit about why you want to care about this, or why you should care about this. So we've got incredibly resilient storage that can be accessed frequently with millisecond access. And that's our S3 data that's all over on the left-hand side there. And then we move across to intelligent tiering or standard, or maybe even Glacier, where we're looking at storing data for very long term. It's much more cost effective to store data, but it's really for archive data, and the retention period is quite long. It may take a little bit of time to get the data back. Moving into Glacier Deep Archive, we're really looking at that super long time archive then. So where Wayne was talking about preserving digital assets for the long term, this is really a class of storage that may help you do that. Why do you care about the different classes of storage, and why should you care about durability? As you're storing data for the long term, we've done some analysis, and it's pretty broadly accepted throughout the industry that storing 2 copies of data on one site, for example, if you're taking a tape backup and you've got 2 tapes, or maybe you've got a storage array and a tape backup on one site, we're looking at 4 nines of durability. If you're then beginning to offsite your tape backup, we're looking at 5 nines of durability. Now, an AWS region is designed for 11 nines of durability. And that's really important when we're working with partner solutions to move data from maybe on-premises backup to cloud backup. Let's think a little bit about how cost really works in AWS as well, because if you're not familiar with cloud and cloud billing, this can be a little bit confusing. Now, let's just assume that that direct storage cost in the middle is the same for everyone. So let's just say that a traditional backup provider can buy a spinny disk for the same cost as Amazon can buy a spinny disk, for example. When we're thinking about on-premises costs, we have to consider migration, underutilization, the actual cost of managing the system, so human resources costs, hardware and software maintenance costs over time, networking costs, and then the data center space, power, and cooling costs. Now, AWS, the majority of those costs are actually built in. And what we charge you for, data transfer, maybe request and retrieval, which can bring you to a significantly lower total cost of ownership overall, particularly when we're looking at S3 costs and those longer term archive tiers that are significantly lower cost than the instant access tiers. So let's think about some of the actual backup challenges. Now we've covered off a little bit of the infrastructure that underlies this. So a traditional backup solution might not be as cost effective now as it was when you designed it 10 or 15 years ago. You might be getting to the stage where you can't scale as effectively as you designed for, again, maybe 15 years ago. Valuable resources and high touch points are often required to keep everything up and running. So just looking at that little picture on the right, that's a pretty common situation that I come across in my role, where you've got your traditional server, which is maybe protected to an on-premises storage array or backup appliance, and then tapes get off-sited, maybe professionally off-sited, maybe stored in your backup locker. Now, what we do is we take a slightly different approach. We like to help customers modernize that backup and restore. So where you've got a traditional backup appliance, quite often we can help with a partner solution by implementing something that we call the cloud connector. So you'll come on to how Veeam do this shortly, but we can replace that backup appliance and all of the tape management pain by simply connecting your existing backup infrastructure into Amazon S3 for long-term data storage. Now, you can derive some immediate benefits from storing your data in AWS. For example, the first point I want to make is about the durability of that data. So where you're storing your digital assets for a long period of time, we need to make sure that you're storing them in one of the most durable environments that you can find. You can actually leverage your existing investments, so you don't necessarily need to change what you do on premises. We're changing where we're storing the data, moving that from on premises into AWS. We can demonstrate exceedingly cost-effective storage by making sure that we put data in the most cost-effective tier. And we can eliminate those tape backups, so the pain of managing tape, considering the durability of tape, refresh tape, all those challenges. Now, we can also help you unlock new insights. So once you've actually protected your data to AWS, you can restore that data in AWS should the worst happen. Or you can potentially restore that data into AWS to do complex analytics on it that you can't necessarily perform on premises. So this foundation for storing data in AWS is hugely important to understand, as then we begin to think about the broader partner integrations. I'm going to hand over to Simon to talk about how Bytes integrate AWS into their DataShield environment. And then we'll hear from Veeam after Simon. So thanks very much for your attention. I'm going to be here for Q&A at the end.
Thanks, Tom. And as most of you can see, I've logged in under Adam's profile. A slight technical hitch. I'm going to share my screen now. Great, hopefully everyone can see that.
Yep, got it.
Perfect, cool. So my name's Simon Walker, as Adam mentioned, I'm the Cloud Services Director, and my section is really just talk a little bit about the Bytes AWS practice, the kind of things we do and how we take customers on a journey. And we typically see this kind of initial DataShield offering back up into the cloud as a first step into the cloud, but often we see organizations do it as part of a wider project as well. So in terms of the practice and how it's been built out, we've really mapped it against how customers do go on this journey. And today's all about the DataShield. So I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail, but typically when organizations start looking at the cloud, they have many questions about how much it's going to cost, how long is it going to take, how much effort and skills is needed to get into the cloud, and a whole lot more. So what our objective is typically when we're talking to customers when they're talking about moving to the cloud, specifically AWS, we go through these phases. The first one being assess phase, where we look at what the environment looks like, what that might look like in AWS. We look at what kind of costs it would be, we look at the security, we look at backups, and then we also fundamentally look at how we can make it cheaper for you to move there. And there's a whole host of funding programs to the extent that actual phase, the assess phase, is fully funded by Amazon. And what you'll find a theme running is Amazon's very good at supporting customers move to the cloud. Be that by supporting partners like ourselves to design, architect, and migrate and train your teams. So once we've kind of done the assess phase where we know roughly how much it's going to cost, we've built a business case for the wider team, so you know what that's going to look like compared to what your current estate looks like. Then we move into discovery, and that's where we start pulling back the covers, go into more detail, look at the applications. We start looking at the actual migration and any risks associated with that. So for example, we'll look at your skill base at the moment within your organization, and we'll make sure that the teams have the right skills, or over the period of the migration they grow those skills through training plans, whether it be accredited or training plans that we put in place. When we do projects, we typically building a lot of time around the actual migration, holding the hands of the teams, customers, to make sure that they're not just sat on one side of the fence and we're the other. We try and bring the two teams together. As we move forward, we move into this mobilize phase, which essentially is where we start building the landing zone and the platform of what your architecture is going to sit on. In that way, we're also proving all the work we've done previously with the discovery and the planning and the high-level designs, because we actually move a proof of concept workload at that phase. And again, at this point, we're still not fully committed to moving everything across. We're very much taking this almost in baby steps to make sure that all the processes we put in place, all the governance we put in place, everything is working. And at the mobilize phase is typically where we would make any changes before we move into the full migration. But again, each of these phases are funded. So we're doing a large project with a local council, and every single one of these steps has been funded fully by them. So all we need on their part is their resources, which is obviously important and a cost to them, but essentially all other costs of design, architecture, migration is covered by us. As we move into migrate, that's where the full project kind of kicks in, and the workloads are moved into in staged phase processes. And then we start looking at modernization. So modernization is where we look at really driving down the cost, looking at more native cloud services, moving away from physical or virtual servers to serverless computing, microservices. And again, that really drives costs down. And Then we have this whole life cycle, cost optimization and support and managed services. And that's all fundamentally what we do as a business to make sure customers are continually saving money or driving those costs down, keeping an eye on costs, because managing cloud is very different from managing on-premise architecture. It is easier to spin up workloads in the cloud, which is a benefit and a negative when you look at it from a cost perspective. Speed is brilliant, but cost straight onto the books is there as well. So we drive those costs down with our cost optimization and managed services. So the DataShield service. So as Adam and Tom have already mentioned, we see Amazon is the place to put backups. It's ultimately scalable. I've managed data centers in my past and career, and one of my biggest bugbear is being told that we need to buy more disks, and then all of a sudden the array hasn't got enough space, so we need to buy more shelves, and then we have to buy a new array, and it just goes on and on and on and on, and then you have disk failures and all those problems that you have. So typically that wipes it away. So when we were working with Veeam and Amazon to build the service, I was quietly confident that this is going to be a really popular service for organizations, because what we want to do is make this as simple and painless as possible, particularly for organizations that maybe haven't had experience with AWS previously, because those organizations don't necessarily want to learn everything about Amazon. They just want to put their data in a secure place and be able to retrieve it as and when they need it. So working with Veeam and Amazon, we've built this solution, and essentially it goes in this cycle. On the right hand side is essentially almost like the pre-sales of how we get the design together. So we do an assessment phase where we get you to fill out a very short questionnaire that helps us produce and design a statement of work, which is bespoke to what your requirements are. At that point, we look at what the funding could be for that requirement. All funding's based on how much consumption you're going to be driving within AWS. So if you're backing up loads, then obviously funding is going to be higher. If it's a tiny amount, then it's going to be a lot lower. Once we've established that, we communicate that, then we get the project signed off. And the project management team will then start bringing in the resources, aligning resources on your side and kicking that project off. In terms of the actual build work, again, we don't just kind of hand it over the fence. We actually will build this with you. So a core part of it is building out the network that's going to sit on, and we will do all that for you. We will define the network that best suits you as well. So we'll go through a list of questions to design and architect that environment. We'll also build the architecture for the backup, so the staging environment for the server itself that will be doing the work to take that data from on-premise into the cloud. And then of course we talk a lot about security as well. Every customer is very different, so we have to kind of make sure that the security is right for them. So we go through that and we make sure that's all implemented as well. So essentially end to end, we work with the customer so the environment is exactly the way they need it to be, and the software that we're using with Veeam is configured the way it works within your organization, and takes all the pressure off you. And then it's an ongoing service essentially. We will bill it from Amazon, the cost of the estate as well. So just to kind of summarize of why customers are doing this, and we are seeing a lot of opportunities, particularly in the public sector. We like to compare it with the difference between on-premise and backup. And one of them I've already mentioned, the kind of the scale, the time it takes to buy disks or get the best price for disk or shelves or arrays, whatever it might be, is often missed out when looking at TCO. People don't realize the sheer amount of cost it takes to go out, get 3 quotes, get it shipped, get it unpacked, send an engineer into the data center, pull out the old disk, put the new disks in, and there is a real life cost to that compared to just it scaling dynamically without anybody doing anything, and you're just tracking those costs. So that's really key. The durability, which Tom mentioned as well, is key. I mean, as I said, my experience is managing data centers, and things do break all the time, and quite rightly, things do break in Amazon's data centers as well, but because of the sheer amount of scale they have, the durability of the 11.9s is critical, and means that you can be a lot more comfortable with it not impacting your backups or your data. Obviously, security, that comes up a lot. But I think one of the biggest benefits, which is often missed out, is the fact that all that data is valuable to whatever organization you are in, and very little is done with it normally. In Amazon, there's a whole load of services, off-the-shelf services that you can do against that data. So machine learning and AI services, and I think that's kind of the real kind of the gold at the end of the tunnel, really. Once it's in a place where you have all these other services wrapped around it that you can then start integrating that data, you might not even know what you want to get out of that data at this stage, but that's the kind of conversations we can have with you and see what services are available within Amazon that we can use that. Okay, so that's me done. So Katia, I'm handing over to you now.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen.
No worries.
Can everybody see my
Yep.
screen okay? Yeah,
All
perfect.
good. Perfect.
It's amazing. So yeah, let me just first of all introduce myself. My name is Katia, and I look after public sector customers in the south of the UK at Veeam. This presentation is just going to be under 10 minutes, and then we'll spend the rest of the hour answering your questions. So why Veeam on AWS? Let's first of all see where this demand for cloud services is coming from. Here we can see the latest survey results answering the question what customers estimate their organization's percentage of service in each format is currently and what they anticipate the percentage will be in the next 2 years. So you can see from the results that the majority of organizations see the percentage of physical and virtual servers within their data centers falling, whereas the percentage of hosted virtual machines within the cloud growing. And this is true for both actual last year and this year numbers, and for the estimated numbers in 2023. So just to quickly give you an overview of where Veeam currently stands in the market, Veeam has recently reached $1.1 billion in bookings. Veeam has actually a proven record showing double-digit growth year over year, and no other competitor in the industry is showing this growth. Today we have more than 400 customers worldwide, and this number keeps growing. We add around 3,000 customers pretty much every month. A big name, Gartner, they named Veeam a leader for the 5th time this year, and they positioned Veeam as the highest for the ability to execute. IDC, another big name, they also named Veeam as the #1 in market share growth for data protection, beating all legacy solutions. So just moving on, here I would like to talk about the cloud journey our customers may be on, and there are multiple scenarios where Veeam can assist with on this journey, of course. So a lot of customers still have some data on premises, and they still need to back it up, of course. The issue most of the public sector customers face is the high cost of hardware storage. With Veeam, you will have the flexibility to back up an archive to the cloud with Veeam Cloud Tier, using the more cost-effective storage in the cloud. Veeam can also help with your disaster recovery requirements. You can leverage cloud as an on-demand recovery site, or you can also migrate your on-premises workloads to the cloud. I personally also see more and more public sector customers, especially education and local government, looking to protect their Microsoft Office 365 infrastructure, as they want to avoid the risk of losing access and control over that data due to threats like ransomware, security threats, and policy gaps as well. With Veeam, you can easily create Office 365 backups on premises or in the cloud, and then quickly recover data at a granular level. As we also saw earlier from the survey results, there is a very big shift towards moving the infrastructure to the cloud. And of course, workloads located in the cloud are not protected by default. so Veeam can back up those cloud native workloads as well. And finally, we see Kubernetes becoming one of the fastest growing infrastructure platforms, and Veeam provides a very simplified cloud native application centric approach to protect ECS cloud native apps and data as well. Here, I would like to go into a little bit more detail on how Veeam and AWS can work together to help our customers and show specific use cases. So first of all, you can back up any workloads with Veeam to Amazon S3, S3 Glacier, and BTL. If you need to make your backups immutable, you can achieve that with Amazon S3 Object Lock integration. You can also utilize AWS to directly restore any Veeam backup or permanently migrate any Veeam protected workloads in just a couple of clicks. And you can also copy the same workloads to AWS for development or test purposes. And finally, Veeam has released a solution called Veeam Backup for AWS, which delivers native, fully automated AWS backup and disaster recovery to protect and manage Amazon EC2 and Amazon RDS data. With this solution, you can secure your AWS data and fight back against ransomware and cybersecurity threats. You can also effectively protect, move, and manage hybrid and multi-cloud data from a common control plane. There is a very flexible deployment model for this solution. So you can either use the portable Veeam Universal license that you potentially have heard of already, or you can get the license directly from the AWS marketplace. So finally, I would like to quickly go over the cloud native promo that we have at Veeam for Veeam Backup for AWS that I just covered. So you get free 30-day trial to evaluate the solution. You can then get $250 in AWS cloud credits. And when you buy 12 months or more, you get 3 months for free. Of course, if you have any questions on this particular promo or anything else I just covered, just drop me a message afterwards or drop us a question in the chat here so we can answer it straight away. But before we move on to the Q&A session, I just wanted to mention just a final thing on this topic. We at Veeam are constantly innovating, of course. With AWS specifically, there have been 2 major releases in 2020. There was one major release earlier this year and another one coming pretty soon. So watch this space. I think that's it. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation on why Veeam on AWS. Thank you so much for providing me with this opportunity to talk to you all today. And now moving on to the Q&A session, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Katia. Appreciate it. So thanks, everybody. So that's the end of the slides. Just from my side, the major call to action from a Bytes perspective, if what you've heard today strikes a chord, if it's of interest, we have a very simple questionnaire-based approach that we can share with you. You can fill in the details, and actually the outcome of that is we will come back to you with a statement of work, giving you those figures that Simon's talked about, that I talked about at the beginning. So all the data points that you would need to potentially make a decision about moving forward and moving your backup into the cloud. So we'll look at the cost of getting you there. When you're there, what's that going to cost per month? And we'll also give you an idea of any additional services that we think you might want to consider or that we can support you with. And as Simon alluded to, that funding from Amazon can be really attractive. And indeed, we've seen a number of customers now, specifically with the DataShield service, where we've got them a zero cost to actually move that data into AWS. So they have just paid for ongoing consumption, which we're able to show them a good saving on going out there and doing it in the classic on-premise world. So yeah, call to action is if it strikes a chord, if it's interest, please get in touch. We can give you a questionnaire, or we can set up a face-to-face call and we can run through it in person. I don't believe there've been any questions put into the chat, but there you go. I see someone, Eamon. Yeah, so what is the main USP of AWS over Azure for, what's the question, for backup and recovery? Tom, do you want to put it out there and give the view of AWS versus Azure, and then Simon, maybe you can give our view as from a partner perspective?
Well, so I think you may have already made a strategic decision as an organization as to which hyperscaler you want to move to. And I don't want to get into a sort of a competitive situation there, as you may have chosen a different hyperscaler for good reasons. Where we believe we offer the most flexibility around storage for backup is across the massive breadth of services that we offer around our object storage for backup. And Veeam can leverage all of our different tiers of storage and really provide the lowest overall total cost of ownership for a cloud backup. Now, when it comes to data protection within AWS as well, we can leverage those cheaper costs of storage for backup. And as you saw today, Veeam are able to manage in AWS backups as well as on-premises backups to AWS. So I think Bytes or ourselves would be more than happy to run through an individual TCO study with you to identify how we can help save money. And clearly, if you want a little bit more detail than that, we'd be more than happy to follow up a little bit later. Great question, though.
Thank you, Tom. Simon, anything to add there at all?
No, I mean, I think as Tom said, it is a choice at the end of the day. There are potentially some TCO benefits in some of the tiering. Obviously, AWS is a fair bit more established than Azure, but Azure is a very good platform as well. I guess from our perspective, we've found it very nice to use the AWS in terms of all the orchestration, CloudFormation work that we've done to actually build these environments very simply and easy, and customers find it very easy to take and on board with the console, particularly with the Veeam software as well, which obviously goes both ways, goes into Azure and at the end of the day, it is storage in the cloud. So in terms of USPs, it's going to be a choice of where the rest of your stuff's going to go. We're quite agnostic, but there's definitely some benefits of Amazon.
And just to follow up on that, as Wayne mentioned, it's not necessarily just about the underlying cost to store the data. It's about what you're going to do with the data when it's actually in cloud. And again, we normally try to be quite humble about this, but we're the largest cloud vendor today with the greatest breadth and depth of services, and we can demonstrate that across all workloads will be the best place to both store data and run your workloads. So again, happy to take that a little bit offline. I don't know if there are any other questions there.
Yeah, there's a couple more. So Katia, maybe more for you. Will Veeam provide a single view of all data on-prem and cloud? And then the second question, which you might want to take, but Tom, equally, it might be one for you. In terms of ransomware, can cloud backups simulate air gaps?
Yeah, and maybe I won't be able to cover that question as technically as Tom, but yes, we can simulate air gap or immutability basically in the cloud specifically with AWS and S3 object lock.
Yeah, in terms of a single view of all data and platforms?
Yep, there is a single view of all platforms, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. And in fact, we have a universal licensing model for on premises or cloud workloads. On premises doesn't matter whether they're virtual or physical, and in the cloud doesn't matter what cloud as well. It's all centralized view.
Superb, thank you. I mean, Tom, yeah, the ransomware one is something that we kind of we skip over a lot, but seemingly I'm seeing more customers coming to us talking about cloud to support the challenge of ransomware. What's your view?
So we have a prescribed architecture that we'd be happy to share with you around ransomware recovery from ransomware. So if you're leveraging AWS for your data protection, We've got mechanisms in place where we can take second copies, snapshots of that data. We can use software, various AV software to scan through the snapshotted data before we want to recover from it, because the last thing you want to do is recover back from a polluted version of your data. So customers are looking more to cloud to provide those answers, as we can provide a really great granular level of recovery should you need to recover your data from a known good copy. We can stage the data in AWS to rescan it, make sure it's a known good copy, and we can do that regularly, so that we've got that in place prior to you actually needing to recover from it, because the worst time to test your backups is when you need your backups. And that's part of the advantage of being able to restore data at any scale in AWS. So the idea of air gapping backups is, again, really important, and is something that we can do. We provide various ways of identifying users, and we would suggest that we use different user groups to perform backups, to perform recoveries, and to perform that virtual air gap to ensure that no bad actor can actually gain access to those kind of golden copies of your data within AWS. So again, a great question, and that's part of what's going to come out in some of the broader activities that we're running through with both Veeam and with Bytes around the DataShield protection.
Superb, thanks, Tom.
And one further addition to that, if I may, which is related but not quite the same, but while we're in the realm of cyber attacks and cyber security, and something which is very relevant through our partner community as well, is the accessibility of our Shield service, which is to protect you from DDoS attacks. So we talked about ransomware, talked about hijacking, but also DDoS is another thing which public sector customers have suffered from in the past. And if you're concerned about DDoS, as indeed you might be, then I would recommend that we pick up that conversation with you as well, because we've got some pretty strong offers in respect to that, which can add security and resilience to what Tom's been speaking about just now.
Thanks, Wayne. So there are no other questions in the chat. Does anyone have anything burning that they want to take themselves off mute and ask? Or we can potentially look to wrap it up. So if there's anyone that has anything, speak now, forever hold your peace. No, okay, not a problem. Well, look, that's going to be a kind of a wrap then. So thank you everybody for attending. As I say, we've got some clear call to actions. If you're interested, if you want to understand more, if you just have questions regarding the wider AWS world and how we can help support initiatives and asks from your business units and your teams to look at how you can do more with Amazon, then please get in touch. We will be in touch post the event anyway. But thank you everybody for your time. Thank you to the speakers, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.